Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Spar&Brawl. This week, there were some developments concerning Yemen, the war-torn nation in the Middle East. The two warring sides, the Houthis and the opposition, which is backed by the Saudi coalition, they have actually taken part in one of the biggest exchange prisoner swaps since the 5-year-old war started. It involved 1,000 prisoners being swapped between the two sides. Now, this deal was struck in Geneva apparently a month ago, but is part of a bigger deal in swapping prisoners that is supposed to lead to a 15,000 person swap, which the deal was struck in Sweden in 2018. And since then, there have been some small prisoner swaps here and there, but nothing big at this scale. And apparently, both sides have promoted it and talked about it a lot and made a big deal out of it internally. So now we're going to talk a little bit more about what this means for Yemen and for the war. So the UN envoy has said that it was a very important milestone, and it surely does seem like the war is dying down and we're going towards the end phases of it, and this seems to be a positive step in that direction. And as we have discussed in past videos, the Yemen war has been extremely brutal. While the Syrian civil war was going on, the UN labeled Yemen as being the worst humanitarian crisis. So this was all the way back in 2016-17, while the Syrian civil war was ongoing. The reports are that about 100,000 Yemenis have died. As of right now, around 80% of the population, a population of around 20-something million people, require humanitarian and life-saving humanitarian assistance, everything from food to aid, shelter, and protection. And just any other last points I'm trying to see here about the situation in Yemen. And yeah, so now we're just going to get into the bigger discussion, but we did a previous story about a few weeks ago talking about how Saudi Arabia and the UAE have given a total of $0 to the UN humanitarian appeal for 2020. The UN humanitarian appeal is pretty much groups all of the different appeals put out by different UN organizations and smaller organizations for a specific country. And although the Yemen one was extremely well funded in the past few years, almost reaching 100% capacity, so meeting 100% of the requested funds, which almost never happens. However, Saudi Arabia and UAE, which were very much involved during that time, they gave a lot of money to the UN humanitarian appeal, most likely in a way to offset some of the negative media that they're receiving and public relations that they're receiving due to their involvement in the Yemen war. So, I mean, really, this is not a time, even as we're going to discuss, maybe the Yemen war is ending. This is really not the time to forget about Yemen. And in fact, not only does Yemen need money to meet the immediate humanitarian needs of its population, but of course, if there's going to be any kind of rebuilding to a certain extent, that's when a lot of money needs to come into country, and not money attached with, all kinds of promises or crazy interest rates by the World Bank or IMF, but pretty much money given to this war-torn nation. So Sam, I want to ask you if you think this is just another signal showing that the Saudis and the Emiratis are just willing to stop right here, as it was definitely not going in the right direction for them. The situation, the fighting seems to have reached a stalemate for a while. The Houthis appear to control very much northern Yemen and other parts of Yemen, with the Saudi-backed coalition having to change even the capital from Sana'a to Aden, and just pretty much restrict themselves to southern Yemen. And the UAE, they're kind of off doing their own thing, so they've kind of said goodbye. And of course, the American and the British were also involved at the beginning. It took me a while to remember that, but they're also very much a part of this war. But it seems like it's been at least 2 to 3 years where they don't want to have much to do with it, and I think the Saudis too. So do you think, anything that you want to add about this particular event, and what do you think it says about the bigger picture?
No, to be honest, I pretty much agree with everything you said, especially in regards to help to future of Yemen. What I may have some, this is not probably related to this specific news, but I have to, in what I it came to my head. First of all, after the gas explosion, there was a lot of talk about the Lebanon, and is it a failed state or is it not a failed state, or is it becoming a failed state? Blah blah blah.
So the
Um,
Beirut explosion you're referring to.
Beirut, yeah, explosion. But I think Yemen is finished, to be honest. There is no, as you say, it's become a stalemate, and Yemen has basically uh, become divided into two countries.
Once
Uh,
again, right? So there were
one,
two
once
separate
again,
countries until the early 90s, right?
I think so, yeah, early 90s or yeah, 70s, something like that. They were, yeah. I mean, before that, they were one kingdom ruled by the Shia minority in the north. Minority, I don't know if they're a minority for sure, actually, but yeah, for a long time now they were ruled by the Sunnis, and now yeah, it's become two countries again. Uh, yeah, that's actually what I was gonna come to. I was reading about the history of Yemen from many ancient times and all that, which it's interesting to me. But I was reading that, and then there was this book by I think French philosopher Bourdieu. I may miss, but there was this whole idea when the Iraq War happened, the first Gulf War, as the Americans called it, the one that Iraq went to war against Kuwait, and then Americans came in, and it was about the fact that war. It said there was no war. It's all this imagine, like America bombed Iraq after officially the war ended as well. So the war is a creation of like things like CNN. CNN was the first 24-hour news broadcaster, and they were very present in the Gulf War. They kind of made their name during the first Gulf War in the early 90s. So the Yemeni war seems to have been going on pretty much for at least hundreds of years. And yeah, it's always seemed to have been these tribes in the north against these other groups in the south, and to a lesser in the north, uh, Saudi Arabia basically. And yeah, it's again seems to have fallen into a stalemate. I think both Iran and Saudis are sort of trying to reduce their tensions, at least there, but seem to have been a strategic win for the Houthis because of there was such a international pressure trying to destroy them. Yeah, it's yeah
If
that's
anything, they come out as the winners, right? Because they ousted the president all the way in 2014. They came under attack by the Saudis. They haven't lost the Saudis, so I mean, if
yeah, yeah,
anything, they're the winners. If anything,
yeah, winners of, to be honest, ashes.
yeah.
You're, yes, winners. Yeah, you're no, no. They do control majority of
Mm.
the urban areas and all that, and the northern area is the area like most like is kind of the place we call Yemen. Is you're referring to those areas, but and yeah, but they did lose the islands. They lost half of they've lost most of the land mass.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't call them. I mean, it's yeah, winner is not the is not the name that comes to any side of this fucking war.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. A stalemate is the best way to describe it at the moment. Who knows? Maybe after U.S. elections there will be a new jolt into the whole thing. Who knows?
Yeah, I don't think so. And I remember one other thing that I just heard in the past, which is extremely scary about Yemen, is that they rely a lot on exports and most of the on imports. Sorry, for food. So one of their main ports, Hodeidah, apparently was 80% in 80% of it was pretty much destroyed, so it couldn't be used. So that's one
Incap
of the reasons. Sorry.
incapacitated.
Yeah,
Incapacitated?
I don't know. I was struggling with that. This,
Decapitate.
this
Oh, that's beheading.
yeah.
Anyway.
Let's forget about it. But anyway, that is one of the reasons why it might seem, you might think like, how is it even a worse humanitarian situation than it is in Syria? But I think it's because they're so highly dependent on importing food and other goods, which has really made it a horrific situation. And in the next 2 to 3 years, I was just thinking how they're going to come back from this and at least reduce some of their humanitarian needs. it's really unclear, because even if the Saudis and these other countries, these external parties, become less and less involved, you can still imagine that there'll be fighting going on here and there. It's not just all gonna stop, and with no
Oh,
aid coming in, so
about one third of the country is controlled by Al-Qaeda
I,
affiliated groups. So
exactly.
yeah,
Oh
I know
yeah.
whatever that means.
Okay. Yeah.
I love
Right
how
now, actually, I'll put on. I saw this Al Jazeera map. It's really good, and it's called "Who Controls Yemen." So people should be seeing that right now on their screens. And yeah, the bottom third is all Al Qaeda.
I mean, I love how Al-Qaeda is kind of like a startup. They have affiliated like marketing groups, and it's like, yes, they represent us. They are not us technically, but they share our
They're a
values.
franchise.
All right. Yeah, it's fucking fascinating. But yeah, I mean, to be honest, this was a country that before the Civil War was the poorest
Yeah.
Arab nation, I believe, or poorest Middle Eastern nation. I don't one of them. And now, about 5 years, at 6 years of civil war, I mean, yeah, yeah. All I can say is,
Yeah.
yeah.